As promised, today I am back with another special song breakdown. As last episode featured a breakdown of my first solo track, One on One. Today it's time to dive into the second one I dropped called Kemba Walker, paying homage to one of the best bucket getters across the NCAA and NBA. And I would say while One on One was definitely the more intense track, more so bringing the kind of energy one would have in a one on one battle. Kemba Walker is more of the mindset behind what goes on the court, if that makes sense. I feel like with one on one, I gave you everything, right? Like energy and everything like that. It was more of a journey of finding one's confidence. But I think Kemba Walker takes you more inside my mind, and in all honesty, is a more vulnerable track. Beneath all the hoop references, it's really a vulnerable track, especially once I think, like I said, you listen beyond those hoop references. So I'm just as excited to get into this one as I was one on one, if you can't tell. As always, we're going to enjoy those bars, those punchlines, hoop references, rhyme patterns. But as always, what I hope you get from these song breakdowns on H2DG is that there's always a story. It still feels funny to be doing this for my own tracks, but get ready to once again get inside the mind of your favorite podcaster and be inspired by the fact that oftentimes before the big moment comes are the days where you gotta move in faith, push through doubt, and prepare for the blessing that God wants to give you. Welcome to Hip to the Games, the podcast for you, the basketball junkie and the hip hop head. I'm your host, Desmond, and I too have had hoop dreams and enjoy the beautiful genre of hip hop and its history. Together, we will enjoy some of the greatest albums, songs, artists, players, moments, teams, and so much more, while even mixing the two on occasion, all in my hope that you remember why you love both or either of these to begin with. You'll soon understand that Hip to the Games is more than just a podcast. It's a lifestyle. And if you were looking for a platform that combines both basketball and hip hop, you've come to the right place. Welcome back to another episode of Hip to the Games. Shout out to you if you are a loyal listener slash viewer. I always appreciate you coming back. All right, whether that's on the audio platforms or YouTube, always appreciate your consistent support. And if you do happen to be new to the show, welcome to the H2DG family. All right, whether you choose to listen or watch, I sincerely appreciate that support as well. And of course, before we really get into today's breakdown, you got to know I got to give my pregame shout outs out the way. The first one always going to the creative director, Jesus Christ, for another H2DG episode, as it's always a blessing to do what he's put in my heart to do and have the resources to do it on a bi-weekly basis. And the second one always goes to my 19 Media Group family. All right, you see the blue and white logo in the corner. That's the home team. All right, so be sure to give them a shout out and show love across all platforms, whether that's 19M Group on Twitter, 19 Media Group on Instagram, 19 Media Group on YouTube. I mean, we have such a dope network of independent podcasters, passionate creators who, really take time out their own schedules to do, work on the passions that are in their heart. And, if I do say so myself, we got a great group here, and, I always am honored to represent them. And, there's always ways to support, whether that's through listens, views, social media support, merch. I mean, we it's all seen and felt on our end, and I know it is on my end. And it's always a blessing to represent the home team. And I try to do that every time I get in front of this microphone as well. So got to give a shout out to my guys. And as we start to get into today's song breakdown, it's always my hope that you understand how powerful hip hop is and can be. And if you stick with your boy, I can guarantee that you will enjoy this episode, leave with a smile, a laugh, be inspired, or maybe just a simple reminder of why you love hip hop in the first place. And so with all those out the way, we can get into some background on Kemba Walker this time, from yours truly, Desmond Powell. So again, the first thing, similar to one-on-one, right? The first thing I should mention is that again, like one-on-one, Kemba Walker, it's not an original track. I chose to rap over J. Cole's track Heaven's EP, which, pun fully intended, is such a heavenly instrumental. But the funny thing about it is that unlike one on one, this song was not planned at all. One on one, I had pretty much an idea like, hey, this is what I want to do. But this one stumbled on me. I had been sitting on one for a couple weeks, and at the time, it was really the only track that I was thinking about dropping. Um, and I think he even mentioned this on our birthday episode, where we played this or that. But, Devon, he had Heaven's EP on repeat heavy in the recent weeks. So again, after I was kind of finished with one on one, Devon is like playing Heaven's EP on repeat. And, the funny thing about this is that like Devon is always in my ear, like, yo, Des, you should rap on this and you should rap on this beat. I can see you on this beat. This should be your next Instagram freestyle. Like, you would go crazy, bro. Like, he's always doing that. And, and like, not even in regards to just me, but like, Devon has a really versatile and great musical ear. So I always put his suggestions in my pocket. But it's like the one time he doesn't tell me this is when I actually get the sudden urge to rap over Heaven's EP. Like one of the songs Devon is listening to like crazy is like the one time he doesn't say it, and that's when I kind of get like, yo, I need to write to this right now. Um, like I was chilling in the crib. I started listening to the song once Devon started bringing it up, and I'm like, let me run that back. Like, and I was really resonating with the song, right? And obviously, I think Devon was, especially when Cole says like he shed tears, after being cut from the basketball team, and in that moment, he promised to put his all into rap so he doesn't feel that feeling again, like, and that's as I'm resonating with that and just listening to the song, like I'm getting that feeling like I think I should be writing to this, let's see all right, Des, like, come on, like, let's see what we can do. And, lo and behold, um, because I always compare it to one of those moments. It's like when you're writing, it's like when Tom entered a room and he just had a feeling Jerry was there. That's how it feels sometimes when you're just like, I think I should pick up the pen, or, think I should open up my note app or whatever it is, right? Like, and that's how I feel about my rap sometimes. So I was like, okay, I can't ignore this feeling. Like it's too strong for me to ignore. Uh, but mind you, it was all of a sudden. So like I had almost nothing, no concept, no nothing. Um, and I'm just letting the Holy Spirit lead me in this moment, and let this great instrumental do what it does. And but what I did have was a punchline I had saved in my Twitter drafts. And right, like my rapper's gonna feel me on this. Like there are moments where you just come up with such a clever punchline, you gotta write it down on like an old receipt, or you gotta open your notes app real quick and jot it down. Or like I said, if you're me, it might be the Twitter drafts, might be the Gmail drafts. Like you just write it down, and it's like, okay, I'm gonna remember this the next time, whether that's next month or in the next hour. I need to remember this punchline, so let me jot it down for the next time I start writing. And it was definitely one of those moments. So, and 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 if I never said it before, I'm a huge Wale fan. Um, and one of my favorite Wale songs is off his 2011 album Ambition. It's called Double M Genius. And he had a bar on that song that was like, I'ma let my chips fall. Suckers is Kemba Walker trying to see me pitfall. And I was sitting there like, man, like I always loved that line, but I was like, I might be able to kind of come up with something on my own. Like I might be able to play with that a little bit. So I'm thinking about that. I'm gonna let my chips fall. Haters is Kemba Walker trying to see me pitfall, right? And I'm like, okay, but how can I do it without like biting totally off Wale's plate? You know what I'm saying? And at the time I thought of, and then it just dawned on me. Turn a pit to a platform like Kemba Walker. Turn a pit to a platform like Kemba Walker. And I was like, yes, that's it. In church, sometimes you hear the phrase, right, from the pit to the platform. Basically, the Christianese way to say started from the bottom, right? And so I was like, okay, especially because my lyrical content is usually faith inspired. Like, yeah, I think I could do something with that. I think I could do something with that. So at that point, I knew it had to be the last bar I spit. So again, similar to one on one, this was something that was going to be later. Now it was all about feeling everything that was supposed to go before. And so I had the instrumental, and I knew what I wanted to end the track with. And I knew that it was pretty obvious to just call the track Kemba Walker, right? Instead of trying to come up with some other title, I was like, the title's kind of, it's kind of writing itself right now. I just call it Kemba Walker. So when I started writing, I kept sitting on the idea of isolation. Because as an adult, I realized I've always had a connection with that word. As a basketball fan and somebody who had hoop dreams, I've told my story before. I was a scorer deep down. And what is the most ideal play for the best scorer on the team? An isolation play. Everybody clear out, give this player the room to do what they do best, create something out of nothing by themselves. They don't need a screen. They don't need right. They don't need a pick. They don't need misdirections really. Like give me the ball and get out the way. Right. And so, for me growing up, I never felt lonely thanks to, God blessing me with an amazing family, right? However, growing up under and around single parents, I felt like I was always used to seeing people do life by themselves, because they literally had to, and granted, it takes a village sometimes. I've seen firsthand the beauty in that, but a lot of that journey is solo, you know? So as I was and still am very much so coming of age, I always felt like I had to do things by myself because I saw so many people making it work that way, right? So it was like an infinity stone for me. Like I had that voice in my head like, Des, you ain't real if you can't figure out life by yourself, right? So like this started showing up in my life, like even to this day sometimes as I get older. So for example, again, like I said, Kemba Walker's a more vulnerable track, so I'm getting into that here. But like, when I'm helping my mom get groceries out the car, right? I gotta carry as many bags as I can. No, mama, don't help me. Don't help me. Like I gotta learn how to do this by myself. Like that's that voice in my head, as opposed to having extra help, right? And even the chance to because it's not just scenarios like that, right? Like even in high school, or even during college, during like group projects, I would sometimes ask to do them by myself, as opposed to having that extra help, and even at that time, making the chance to make new friends, right? Like I was just more comfortable hitting that Kobe Bryant, calling the ISO. When I started at Foot Locker, my coworkers would always say, don't be afraid to ask for help, Des. Like, it's okay if you can't find a shoe. And like, I hated that so much when they told me that because they didn't understand. It's not that I'm ashamed of help. It's just, again, that voice in my head is telling me I have to figure out things by myself because on a busy day, y'all might not be around to help me, right? Y'all can't just drop everything and help me. So you gotta let me figure it out by myself so I can become a more efficient teammate for everybody else, if that makes any kind of sense. Maybe it doesn't, and that's the issue here, But that was always my thing. And you know, even to this day, right? You can say coincidentally or not, like I just so happen to be a solo podcaster, right? Um, so you see like this isolation, isolation, isolation. Not that it's inherently good, not that it's inherently bad. I think it has its pros and cons in both ways, but you can see that that's kind of been a thing in my life. So that's where my mind started going towards when I thought of Kemba Walker. You know, I'm like, okay, like now I'm getting creative with it. Okay, so what would I do if I was Kemba? How can I go from this recent pit of being in my mid 20s feeling like life don't make no sense and take listeners inside my mind and how I hope to overcome and get to my platform where I can smile at how I made it past those feelings, right? And that's where I got the inspiration of, using the audio clips from that moment, Kemba Walker's big moment in the 2010 Big East tournament. Because if you notice, the commentator sets up the play, then I get into my verse. And then at the end, he comes back. And once I, proverbially make the shot, right? So it's really a play on what would I do with the ball in my hands, but it's also like a life thing, right? Like, let's explore this isolation. Like, am I gonna score? Like, what's gonna happen here? So I essentially used 2 minutes and 30 seconds to like relive a 7 second basketball play, if that makes sense. I stopped time and let you go inside my brain. So with that, I really think that's enough of the background. Like, that's the general inspiration behind this song. And I think it's really about that time to get into it all, shall we? So let's get into my vulnerable track, Kemba Walker.
I mean, if you take those lyrics and you pull them away from the music and you put them up on the wall somewhere and someone had to look at them, they would say, well, this is genius. This is genius work.
All right, so as I just mentioned, once the beat starts, you eventually hear audio of the commentator from Kemba Walker's 2010 game winner versus Pittsburgh in the Big East tournament. And I use this because I felt it aided to the overall story I was trying to illustrate. Again, also just like one-on-one, right? Like, I don't have hooks or anything like that, so got to make up for that. And also just aid, like I said, to the storytelling elements, being able to see the story and not just listen to it, being able to have listeners envision it in their heads, right? Because like I said, hip hop is story, right? So giving the listener a visual that they can envision as a storyteller is just as important as giving them a story with bars and punchlines to entertain them audibly. Right. So and after that moment, I set the scene with my first four lines. Isolation at the top of the key. That's where my heart be. Gotta take care of my biz, this game of marquee. Surrounded by some teammates ready to squeeze the Nina. But since I got the rock, all I'm seeing is John Cena's. All right. So I tell you what was look at that first line, right? Like, I tell you what it is straight there. Is really what I was just saying. Isolation at the top of the key, right? Ball in my hands. This is where my heart be. Like, I'm most comfortable in this situation, through a basketball aspect, like, right? Like, I'm telling you, I'm in my sweet spot. And like Kemba Walker's game in the tournament, right? Like, this is a marquee matchup, like the Big East tournament in Madison Square Garden. Like, that was always a big deal. You turn on the ESPN. I always remember seeing those games as a kid. And like, that's why Kemba Walker's shot was so dope. Not just because he did a cold step back and shook his defender and made the shot at the buzzer, but like, to do that as a college kid in the NBA arena, like, that's a big deal, right? And everybody, even for musicians, right? Everybody wants to perform at the Garden, right? Madison Square Garden is one of the most monumental places you can do anything in life, pretty much. So it was a big deal, right? It's a marquee matchup, Big East tournament, high implications, high stakes game. But of course, on the rap side, I had to pay homage to the late, great Biz Markie, right? So I say I gotta take care of my biz, right? Take care of my business because this is a big game, or like I said, a marquee matchup. Gotta take care of my biz, this game of marquee, Biz Markie, right? And then the next two lines are interesting because I do the opposite of what we hear in rap often. So I say, surrounded by some teammates ready to squeeze the Nina, right? But the thing is, you'll hear a lot of rappers say stuff like, I got shooters on the wing, right? And using basketball to describe what they might get into in the streets. But me, since I don't live that lifestyle, I do the opposite, right? I use like that kind of street scenario to describe basketball, right? So I take that slang you hear in the streets and illustrate this basketball situation. So surrounded by some teammates ready to squeeze the Nina. So literally, I'm saying, like, ISO at the top of the key, that's where my heart be. This is a big game, a big moment. I'm aware of my teammates around me who are ready to shoot in case I pass, right? But since I got the rock, all I'm seeing is John Cena's, right? Which is, again, a wrestling bar on the surface, right? Since I got the rock, right? Dwayne the Rock Johnson, all I'm seeing is John Cena's, right? But, John Cena's famous catchphrase, you can't see me. And then there's always the jokes on Twitter and social media, things of that nature, like, oh, if like you see John Cena in an interview, they'll say, oh, well, why is that reporter talking to nobody? Right? Because you can't see me, right? So it's like he's invisible, right? So I play on that and I say, since I got the rock, all I'm seeing is John Cena's. But right, so this whole four bars here is literally that basketball scenario. Isolation at the top of the key. That's where my heart be. Got to take care of my biz. This game a marquee, right? It's a marquee matchup. Surrounded by some teammates ready to shoot. But since I got the rock or since I got the ball, I don't see them. but it's also like that deeper message of like, again, this is how isolation is in my head. Like I can use my teammates, I'm aware of my teammates, but I'd rather not. I can't find it in me to defer to them, right? Like it's isolation, isolation. Um, so again, it's a lot of it is just me seeing my defender in the rim, right? And creating that basketball scenario. And obviously, like I said, there's the wrestling bars there. And, I immediately think of my 19 teammates, Tyler and Brad of gimmick infringement. I'm sure they'll appreciate that line. But I really just say all that to clarify, like this is still very much basketball, right? Uh, Desmond is not on the streets, by the way. I know I said that like since I got the rock or surrounded by some teammates ready to squeeze the Nina, Desmond is not on the streets. Like I said, I had to reiterate that and mention that I did the opposite of what you hear often in rap. I'm not slinging, hanging, affiliating. Okay, like none of that. But just roll with my creativity. But that's the basketball part. But like I said, on some life stuff, my heart gravitates towards that isolation and even to a fault at times. I got to take care of my business. I feel like I'm in a moment where my life is ready to change, but I don't know which way to go. So the same pressure I would feel in a tournament game in MSG is what I'm feeling in life right now. And with the teammate and John Cena bars, that's like me saying, like, dang, like I'm surrounded by a great support system. They're ready to help me if need be. But at the same time, like this is my life. I got the ball. I can't necessarily rely on them to help me. Like I gotta finish the play. I gotta finish the isolation. So now that I've set that scene pretty much, you start to hear me kind of freeze the moment. And this is what I meant when I said I take you through like a 7-minute basketball play and I slow it down and just fit it in a 2 minute and 30-second song, right? So you'll hear the pit again, back to that Kemba bar, right? Like you'll hear the pit part of the song before we get to the platform. Seize control of the game, but feel a hole in my soul. It's like Stockton and Malone with a pick and no roll. I'm God's soldier, but feeling hypocrite in my core. I preach faith, yet unbelievers channel it more. Right? So this right here is probably the heart of what I've been wrestling with as of late. Again, you still get some basketball references in there in those first two lines, right? I take a flip on Soul in the Hole, right? The 1997 Hoops documentary. And might I add the name of one of the dopest courts in NBA Street Volume 2. But obviously instead of soul in the hole, I say seize control of the game, but feel a hole in my soul, right? I want to come through in this moment, but I don't feel right, and again, things seem misaligned, right? Uh, again, John Stockton and Karl Malone of the Utah Jazz, they were known for immaculate pick and rolls, right? But I'm saying this feels like Stockton and Malone with a pick but no roll, right? It's basically I'm saying it's miscombobulated. What should be easy money is miscombobulated. And even then, right? Like I compare my recent low chemistry with God in that regard to the iconic duo that was John Stockton and Karl Malone, right? So like we should be on that kind of chemistry, but we're not. A pick with no role. Um, we can't execute it properly. Me and God don't seem to be on the same page, and this hurts me because I always try my best to represent him well, yet I feel like a hypocrite because I haven't been exercising the same faith I often encourage others to draw from, right? Again, I'm God's soldier, but feeling hypocrite in my core. I preach faith, yet unbelievers channel it more. A lot of times, you can get again when you kind of stuck in this way of thinking, um, it's kind of again something I'm learning a lot about myself is self-sabotage. I've been victim to that very often in my life. And now it's like at the age of 26, I'm trying to learn how to like undo that. Um Finally, what feels like. And but like I said, that's really the heart of this message. Like I'm feeling like a hypocrite because I always try to be encouraging and stuff like that. But it's like I can't even take the same advice. And even then, because I'm too busy watching the sidelines on my own life, I'm seeing people who probably don't even believe in Jesus and they out here doing dope things simply because they have more faith than they even realize, right? They don't even believe in the faith, but they don't even realize that they have it. to do these things that they're doing. Right. And I'm seeing that like, dang, like I'm supposed to have that because I follow him, but I don't have it. Like, what's up with that? So again, I feel this nudge like faith moves need to be made, but I just don't seem to have any in my tank. Now, before we continue with the rest of the breakdown, though, if you do like what you're hearing so far, here's how you can go above and beyond in your support for Hip to the Games and show some love to the podcast. As a fan of Hip to the Games, not only should you show your love for the podcast, but you gotta express your love for basketball and hip hop. With a wide variety of clothing and accessories, there is always a way to show how much the game of basketball and the game of rap means to you. Let everybody know what it means to be hip to the games by clicking the link in the episode's description to cop some merch and represent the H2DG lifestyle. All right, so as my vulnerability is starting to show at this point in the song, it really continues as I provide more reflection on how I feel in my mid 20s. Overthinking got me sinking, struggle swimming like I'm Dory. He holds the book of life, yet I can't trust him with my story. This chapter 26 starting to feel like it's 11. My shots no longer cash, my bread's failing to leaven. All right, so instead of exercising faith, I'm doing the opposite, right? I'm procrastinating, I'm overthinking. And the illustration that I've had in my head is that it's like I'm in quicksand, um, or even like a pool, right? Where I'm like drowning in my own thoughts. And I think I've said this before on here. Like, that's the thing about being a dreamer, right? Like, you see everything in your head and it's great. But at the same time, you're in your head so often, so much, it's even easier to fall into overthinking thoughts, right? What your mind should be focusing on how you can execute chapter 15, but now your brain is already, okay, well what's chapter 100 going to look like? What happens when we get there? And it's like, chill out, just finish 15, then we go to 16, then we go to 17, and so on. But it's like, nah, like, I need to know what's going to happen then, too. That's kind of how your brain is. Um, and it's kind of like Dory in Finding Nemo, and really her own story, right? Finding Dory, like she always preached, just keep swimming, just keep swimming, just keep swimming. But what happens when that doesn't feel like it's paying off, right? What happens when, dang, like I'm trying to keep swimming and I feel like it's not showing any kind of progress, right? And then those next three lines are some of my favorite in the song, really, because I compare this stage in my life, right? At the age of 26, I compare that to bankruptcy, right? So it's like he holds the book, Jesus, he holds the book of life, right? Yet I can't trust him with my story. Right. My life as Desmond is such a small story in the biggest book there is, right? The book of life that Jesus has, right? He has the book of life and I can't trust him with my little story that's a part of that. And then continuing with kind of like the book analogy, right? This chapter 26 starting to feel like it's 11, right? Chapter 11, bankruptcy, right? So now I'm not even going from books to finances, right? This chapter 26 starting to feel like it's 11. And that's why I say, going back to basketball, my shots no longer cash, my bread's failing to leaven, right? So it's finance, it's books, it's basketball, all in those lines, right? To just essentially say, you know, like my bread's failing 11, right? Or rise like yeast, it's really just me, again, another way to say bankruptcy, right? Like the money ain't there. I'm starting from scratch. I'm supposed to be on chapter 26. I feel like it's 11. I feel like I'm going backwards, right? Like at 26 years old, I just didn't really think life was going to look like this. But again, like I was saying about me kind of unlearning some of these thoughts that I've had for so long, it's like I'm starting from scratch, right? Like bankruptcy, um, you know, or like leavened bread, right? It feels like it hasn't necessarily reached the point that I envisioned it would be by now. So a lot of this too is further detailed in the next few lines that feature some of the questions I asked God in the moment of isolation. I'm feeling stagnated. I ain't reaching my prime. Wish that I could see the end from this moment in time. Will I make it to the front from the back of the line? Will I fulfill what you started on August the 9th? Silly am I. I'm talking wildly trying to reply, wishing that I found it in my heart to comply. Right. So a lot of these lines are really self-explanatory, right? Like I feel stagnant. And when you're in a more difficult or stagnant headspace, you often want to fast forward to the good part, right? You wish you could just fast forward past this part. But usually that's where the growth is. We always want to fast forward, but then imagine if we could do that, then we would miss the lessons and the growth that would occur in that. And the reality is, we can't skip it. That's what makes life what it is, and all its ups and downs. It makes it beautiful, you know. And but in this moment, it's not feeling that way, and I express that sentiment here. Furthermore, you can hear that I'm wrestling with the whole, when is it my turn kind of thing. And then just even straight up asking God, like, will I fulfill the purpose you gave me, right? Will I fulfill what you started on August the 9th, right? On August 9th, 1998. You let me come into this world premature, right? That's how much you believed in me. But I'm scared that I won't even live up to what you put me on this earth for, right? Like, yeah, man, these are very real thoughts and feelings. But the last two lines, in my opinion, are the most important here, because I kind of snap out of that despair and realize how, well, Des, if you have all these questions for God and now you wonder why you can't hear from him, it's because you're too busy talking, right? I'm so in my head I can't even hear his replies. And at that same time, I'm struggling to really get into that space where I can hear from him, right? So I'm just wishing that everything could fall in line right now. So pay attention, because pretty much this whole time I'm still caught in that freeze frame from the basketball scenario, right? And stop in time to take you through my mindset. So for the rest of the song, the isolation scene from the beginning will gradually kind of come back in motion and really come for full circle. Peep my fans in the stands, believing I cannot lose, but I focus on the voice in my head, yelling booze. Gotta give myself grace as I move through the race. Word to Nip, I can't quit. Gotta keep up the pace. Right. So again, I'm at the top of the key with the ball in my hands. And similar to what I was saying in the beginning about my teammates and my support system, right? Surrounded by some teammates ready to squeeze the Nina, right? How I'm aware of their presence, but don't always rely on them. Like, it's also kind of like I also see them in the crowd, right? So they're not just teammates, they're fans too, right? Um, I see them in the crowd cheering, believing in me probably more than I believe in myself. Yet when I'm in that more negative headspace, it becomes even easier to listen to that critic or that heckler in my head, right? Which is me. And it really, this part reminds me of that Carmelo Anthony Jordan commercial from back in the day, where like Carmelo, he was Carmelo the basketball player, Carmelo the commentator, Carmelo the cameraman, Carmelo the fan, like he was everywhere. Um, that's how I see my support system, right? They're my teammates, they're my fans, right? They're probably commentating, just waiting to see like, oh, what's he gonna do, in anticipation. Like, they're with me on the court and cheering for me in the stands, right? So as this scene starts to get momentum, that positivity is going to start to rise to the surface again, right? Um, got to give myself grace as I move through the race. Word to Nip, I can't quit. Got to keep up the pace, right? It's what Nipsey Hussle always said. Like, it's a marathon. We can't give up. And I know I said this before, right? Like, that's why it's called a marathon, because it's not just this quick sprint. Like, this is a journey, and you learn a lot about yourself in that journey before you get to the finish line. So again, trying to kind of shift the narrative here, you start to hear a little more positivity and encouraging words in the midst of this vulnerability that I'm sharing within this deep basketball scene. Too many shots in front of none to quit and say I'm done. God's reflection, a nice little reminder I'm one of one. I guess that's what it's like to find beauty within a struggle, connecting all the pieces in place throughout the puzzle. Though I often feel discouraged and want to forfeit the fixture each day I keep the faith, it brings me to bigger pictures, right? So I really like the set of lines right here, from like a poetry standpoint, um because stemming from that previous line, right? Like, I'm saying how I put in too much work to give up, right? I put in too much work in front of nobody to give up in front of everybody, right? It's like that. Too many shots in front of none to quit and say I'm done. um and then it's the time now where I need to remember that I'm made in God's image, right? So I'm an overcomer like he is. It's the moment where I'm like, you know what, God made me, I'm that dude. So I'm finding the beauty in the struggle, right? It's what I was saying earlier, how it's through these hard times that help you find yourself again. And when I said, connecting all the pieces in place throughout the puzzle, I wanted to illustrate how life is like that a lot. Like you can have an idea of what you want like you can have an idea, a set idea, obviously, of what that final puzzle is going to look like, but there are so many pieces to put in place, right? Like those big jumbo puzzles. The fun part is not finishing the puzzle, but it's realizing the journey to get there, how each single piece plays a role, from the ones that only revealed the background to the ones that revealed the subject in the foreground, right? Like every piece has a role. And again, like a huge puzzle, sometimes in life you can get discouraged and you want to give up. But every day we choose to press on is a day we get closer to where we want to be. Or like the puzzle analogy, right? The more you fill in piece by piece, the more of the final picture you start to put together, right? Oh yeah, like there's the sun, okay, and now we got the grass, and these are the trees, right? And eventually you get to a point where everything makes sense, the mundane and the amazing. Like it all was worth it. That little green piece where you just didn't really know what it was going to turn into yet, but then it's like, oh, you know what? It's forming the grass, and then it's going to lead up to the tree right here, and then the sun is going to shine, that kind of thing. So it's like I'm talking to myself, like, keep going, Des. Like Jesus told the disciples, you may not understand now, but one day you will understand, and I refuse to give up in the middle of my puzzle, and you shouldn't either, right? That's what this song is all about. Let's find out what it was all for. And finally, to end the song, we officially snap right back into the big basketball moment, to which you can presume is the moment right before I go from the pit to my platform. Ball in my hands, knowing that I'm given a chance. Close my eyes. God, please help me advance. The clock is winding down. I'm praying that I don't falter. Hope to turn this pit into a big platform like Kemba Walker. So you see, ball in my hands, clock going down, just like Kemba Walker, right? I'm trying to help my team advance, but or individually, right? I'm trying to come through in the clutch. But at the same time, this is kind of like a cliffhanger, right? Because in my real life, like I'm still 26 going through these feelings. So I don't know what the future looks like. But one thing is sure, I'm gonna pray to God that He lift me up when I don't always feel like getting up myself, and that He helps me trust in Him even on my hardest days and the days I feel like giving up, you know. And of course, like that serves as like the prayer before I take my shot, right? Close my eyes. God, please help me advance, you know. Um, and it's like when I wrote that, it's like I imagine that's what Kemba Walker was going through before he knocked down the shot versus Pittsburgh, right? Like, and literally turn his pit, right? PITT, Pittsburgh, to the biggest moment of his career that would help him become an eventual top 10 draft pick and have an all-star career in the NBA, right? From the pit. That moment against the in the pit took him to his platform. And again, metaphorically, right? God, I'm trying to get to my pit of this, like these feelings that I'm having, to my platform where I can praise your name and give you the glory and say, like, yo, like God brought me out of this. Like, this is how I did it. And he did this through me and that through me. And, this is what I went through. This is what I learned, all those things. Right. So like when I say close my eyes, God, please help me advance. Like I said, that's like a reference to Kemba because right, they had to advance in the tournament, but it's also like a reference to me, like, God, I'm gonna pick up my ball, I'm gonna shoot this shot, but please just help a brother out real quick. Help a brother out for a little bit. Um, and like I said, the clock is winding down. I'm praying that I don't falter, but I'm praying that the moment goes well and I turn my pit into a platform like Kemba Walker, right? And of course, like I said, that wordplay there of pit to platform, pit as in Pittsburgh, pit as in like the pit of despair, whatever you want to call it. So I felt like as a listener, it under the surface, it's a very vulnerable track. So I kind of wanted that happy ending still to where it's like, you know what, it's gonna work out for me, or it's gonna work out for Dez, or however you're listening to it, right? Like I just wanted to equally inspire you, that your shot can go in just like Kemba's, and even motivate myself to say like, Dez, like yours can go in like Kemba's. You can turn your pit to a platform. And you can experience the beauty after the struggle just as long as you don't give up. And with that storybook kind of ending, that brings us to the end of the breakdown. This one went a little faster, I feel like. But man, what a blessing it is to be able to break down a song of my own once again. These are really two songs that I really enjoyed creating. Obviously, as I felt the urge to actually record them. But because for so long I always told people, I would never make music. I just had too much respect, you know, for those that have been doing it longer than me. I didn't want to step on any toes. Like there are people who genuinely want to make this their livelihood. I'm cool with it as a hobby, but there are people who genuinely want to eat off this thing. Like I don't want to step on nobody's toes, but it's like a nice way to tap into the gifts and the creativity that God has blessed me with. And like with everything I do, I just want to point others to him in the process. And I'm genuinely like proud of myself because for so long I convinced myself that I had nothing to say, that nobody wanted to hear hoops and faith references, that it was going to be corny, you know what I'm saying? Or like I always say, like I ain't in the streets, I ain't in the club, like I don't have nor want 100 women in my lap, like I'm just me. Like, a lot of those stereotypical things that you would think come with rap/hip hop, like that's just not what I'm about. I just, truly fell in love with Jesus and his ways. And, I've always loved basketball. So those subjects are gonna come through my raps the most. Because I'll admit, especially since starting this podcast, like it's been very easy, I think, for people to see me as the hip to the games guy. That's another reason why I was kind of hesitant because I'm like, I feel like people just think I listen to hip hop sometimes just to catch the basketball bars and stuff like that. But it's like, nah, like I love it just like you do. I'm in it for the storytelling just as much as I am. Yeah, like obviously I'm gonna catch those bars, but like I want to know what you got to say. I want to hear what makes you different from the next MC. Like I'm a nerd about it too. Like I say, I like to sit up here and act like, I don't write in my as a hobby and stuff like that, but like I study the same stuff that anybody else would, any other fan or any other MC would study. Um, and I feel like through creating these tracks, it kind of showed me like, if I really want to, like I could do this if I wanted to. And I don't mean that as if to say like I'm this like gonna be this superstar rapper type. Like I don't mean it in that way. I just mean like, I prove myself wrong. Like I got a little depth in me. I can hang a little bit. I'm not gonna sit up here like I'm the best in the world, but like, I can hang a little bit. Um, I can write in a way that the average person can still relate to, basketball fan or not. That's what makes me proud. And again, I gotta shout out my guy L Summers, man, who produced me and Jarrell Powell's track The Days. He mixed both of these songs for me, made them sound crisp and everything. Like I gotta shout out J. Cole for the inspiration. I gotta shout out Kemba Walker, for trusting his skills and having the one of the most gangsta game winners in basketball history and how it served as an inspiration for me to make a song like this. And like I said, I just really hope the message comes through. I felt like I just flew right through this. But I really hope that message comes through, and even maybe other messages. Like I said, that's why I always encourage you to hit me up because music is dope in that way. Everybody hears different things. So I would love to continue to hear how you resonate with it. And, obviously I got to give you a shout out, for listening in the first place, especially a song, not just listening to the podcast, but adding a song to that, right? Two songs, to that matter, right? Like just taking the time out to listen to the pod, listen to the music, like all of that means more than you know. Um, and as always, I genuinely hope you give this song a listen. It's I hope it inspires you to keep going in your own journey, to turn your pit into a platform like Kemba Walker, and that you allow your life to be a walking testimony of God's faithfulness and provision. And, like, listen, I already ask you to listen to the pod every time I drop. So I sincerely, sincerely appreciate you for giving my tracks of all the artists out there that want your ear, that want your attention. Like you take time out of your day to hear my thoughts on some of my own contributions to this beautiful thing we call hip hop. Like I said, please share any and all thoughts with your boy. I'm always around for further discussion on Twitter, on IG at Desmond Powell _. If you want to talk some more, you can tweet the show at Hip to the Games. I always leave those doors open. But here's to another reflection of the God gifted brilliance of hip hop's present, if I do say so myself. And of course, here's a huge shout out to you for being hip to the games. And I thank you so much for sticking around for another episode, all for the love of the best combo there is. Peace out and God bless. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Hip to the Games, and if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit up the socials at @DesmondPowell_ and @Hip to the Games on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok so you don't miss out on the fun. And please follow or subscribe to the show and leave a review on the podcast platform you're on right now, as your support is greatly appreciated.